This is an article from about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. It's not an article, it's like a shockingly short piece from the New Yorker, because usually the New Yorker just goes on and on and on for 30, 40, 50, 100,000 words to say something that might take 1,000 words to say. But this guy, and I don't know how old he is, and I don't care, he said the misconception about the baby boomers in the 60s, and his little idea was, well, they were in the forefront of all the changes of that decade. Well, anybody that could do math knows that the baby boomers born from 1946 to 1964, that is an official United States Census designation. It is the only cohort that has that official designation. All the other cohorts that you hear about, the greatest generation, the silent generation, the millennials, Generation X, that's all horse shit. That's all informal designations by people who think they know something, but they don't. The baby boomers were heavily affected by the 60s. That is no question whatsoever. But of course, they were all but the very oldest they were simply too young to actually be in the forefront of the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the campus protests, etc. That ain't rocket science to figure that out. So I don't know why somebody is being paid to write something that anybody with a brain can figure out. Furthermore, I have already talked about in a video a while back, probably last summer or something, where I ranted that the baby boomers did not elect Reagan. And they did not elect Reagan, okay? The older generations, the parents and the grandparents of the baby boomers are the ones who elected Ronald Reagan to the White House. So that needs to die too. It's because the youngest of the baby boomers were too young to vote in 1980. And the fact that over 5 million people that were born in the 19th century were still alive in 1980. And therefore, it was mostly older generations who voted Ronald Reagan in. But anyway, yeah, anybody that could do the least amount of math knows that the baby boomers did not create the turmoil of the 60s. It was the people born 5 to 10 years before that, whether they were the writers of that era, whether they were the musicians, rock musicians. We know that, especially those born in the early 1940s, from 1940 to 1945. They're heavily represented in the rock music of the 40s. A few from the 30s, and a few later born in the 40s. Hardly anybody from the 50s. But those were the people that had the impact on culture. So, why pay somebody to write something that is glaringly obvious to anybody who can do math?